Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, Vee
and Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in the animation and comics industry about things like finding our artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on Magma.
We ask people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. If you haven't yet, check out our Patreon and subscribe to our channel.
Today we have with us Johnny Ryan. Johnny Ryan.
Damn.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Johnny. It's so exciting to have you on the podcast because you have a long career in comics and animation, and you have a major in English literature. Did you?
Yeah. Is that a bad thing?
I think that's cool.
No, it's
and I wonder, because I always wonder, like, most of the guests we have, they went to art school, and I like to ask, like, art school, yes or no? Is it worth it? So what's your opinion on
school? What's my opinion? School sucks.
School sucks.
Art school? I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on. Oh, the cat's about to attack me. It kind of depends on the person. I feel like I've always been very self-motivated, so I've always sort of felt like I don't need no school.
Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Because I mean, that's like ultimately that's the best school is just doing it. You want to make comics, just get a piece of paper and a pencil and start doing it.
School was in your heart all along.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was interested in seeing that you had a major in English literature, because I wonder if, since you have a big part of your career being a writer, if that helped shape the way you think about stories at all, or is it just kind of like...
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think especially doing comics, you have to come at it from a place of storytelling and be able to construct stories, whether they're fictional or autobiographical. You have to approach it as, okay, I want to tell a story and I want to express it clearly and in an entertaining way to engage an audience. That to me is sort of great comic bookery, I guess. I think there is and I think also in animation too, you see people in comics and in animation, they can draw like nobody's fucking business, like crazy, talented, amazing, like they're when in animation, like their boards look like finished animation, but they can't tell a joke, they can't tell a story, and that's where you need people to come in and sort of guide them and show them how to do those things. And yeah, I feel like if you do, it is important to if you want to do animation, you want to do comic books, and you want to be good at it, it's you should hone both of those skills. That's it.
I also kind of wonder. So I took a couple of notes before the episode.
Oh, you prepped.
I prepped.
Oh,
I feel like from what I gather, a lot of your inspiration come from underground comics, right?
Yeah, mostly Crumb.
Right. Yeah. Like that's. I mean, he's like probably the biggest name. Would that be true?
In underground comics? Yeah,
yeah. And I wonder kind of what's your experience being part of the underground comics scene and kind of seeing it evolve. Like, have you like noticed any like changes? Like, what was it like? Like being inspired by the scene, going into the scene, and being and seeing the scene.
And do you feel like
now.
You're the new king of the lowbrow indie comics?
I don't know if I feel like I'm the king, but I definitely feel definitely feel all alone.
Oh,
I definitely feel like I'm the only person who's sort of pushing people's buttons, pushing boundaries, trying to go against the grain, trying to be transgressive. not in any kind of forced way, but just kind of, it's just natural for me to be the type of artist that bothers people and makes them irritates people. I like doing that. And I feel like there was an element of that in the original underground movement from the 60s and 70s. I don't think that is something that really exists anymore. I think comics now are mostly very nice, and everybody wants to fit in, and everybody wants to, feel good and treat everyone with respect and be sweet and kind.
I do like that this is with a negative connotation, that we're treating people sweet and nice. I understand what you mean, but I do think it's funny in the meta.
But I mean, okay, I want that when I go to the grocery store. I don't want it in my art. Okay,
sure. Yeah, I get it.
That's the difference. Like when when I read comics, when I see movies, when I see books, I like stuff that is more on the nastier side, violent, disgusting, rude, upsetting, emotionally unstable. I like that stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was like going through like a lot of your art, like it reminds me of a little bit of like William S. Burroughs. Like it's kind of like that vibe that that I get something, which is, I mean, it's true in the sense when when you read one of his books, or when I look at your art, it's very like you have an emotional reaction. Like you're not indifferent. It's not the kind of stuff that leaves you indifferent. And I guess that would be I think that's an interesting way to look at art, because I was just talking with a friend about like what is art, and like now I want to hear what your definition or what you think art is.
Well, now I think like it's never been worse for art because of the internet and social media and creating this sort of like collective hive mind. And even if sort of the intentions are good, like, like I said, like, well, we all have to get along, and we have to like treat everybody nice and be kind and be respectful, and having that cop in your head is ultimately going to keep you from truly expressing yourself. So if you're thinking of like, oh, I have this idea, I want to draw this thing. Oh, but if I draw that, I might not be able to get that job, or I might not be able to work for that magazine, or my friends might, not want to hang out with me. And now that we're so connected to people, and usually as an artist, you shouldn't listen to other people. They're usually wrong. You have like a compass in your own brain, in yourself, that tells you what to do. And I feel like for the most part, the internet is telling you to not do that. So you need to just stop listening to people. Listen to your own brain that tells you what to do.
Yeah, but when I look at something, I need to think about how someone else is going to feel about what I feel about it.
Well,
no.
You have to sort of focus on, like, if you're going to do that, focus on one person. So, like, let's say you have a friend that you want your mommy to like your work. Draw for your mommy, and focus on her and try to entertain her. And especially like, when I do my work, I usually have a particular person in mind that I'm trying to entertain. And I know that like, this person is going to be entertained by what I'm doing. But if you open it up to like, I want, thousands and thousands of people to like what I'm doing, you're always going to be disappointed, and it's just going to be confusing, and you're not going to be able to really focus on what you want to do, what you want to get done. And you're also going to be questioning yourself. And that I feel like is ultimately very destructive. You're not going to be following your inner voice that's telling you what to do. Because ultimately you have to think that like whatever your inner voice is telling you to do, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to appreciate it. And that is your audience. That's the person you should be making art for.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. No, I think that's and I think that's really interesting to what you're talking about, the inner voice. Do you how did you find your voice? I think that's something that can be really hard for artists, especially if they're trying to either go into animation or, like we hear a lot, write what you know. And I feel like sometimes that can be good, but also some like, what's the word? Like petrifying. Because what if your life is mostly just like going to work? Like there.
Well, yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I follow that credo, write what you know.
Mm,
I think you should write what you want to write,
Yeah.
and you should draw what you want to draw.
mm.
So, and even if it's something that you have no, I don't know about outer space and what the fuck goes on out in outer space, but if I want to draw like a big, space adventure, I mean, did George Lucas know about like, what was going on in outer
We
space
know
when he
you
made
fought
Star
to the
Wars?
death in a prison pit. I know that's
But it-
lived experience.
But it's just like use your imagination. Like what would it be like if you went to the prison pit? What would it be like if you went into outer space? What would it be like if you went into a jungle? And sometimes some of the more interesting stories come out of people who've never been to these places. They just make the shit up. And just because it's not like maybe scientifically accurate, fuck it. Sometimes there's like a sincerity to a person's work where you're just like, this is just all in all entertaining. I don't really care that this person doesn't seem to have like actual knowledge of like what it's like to be on the moon.
Yeah, I feel like when people say write what you know, it's not always like quite as literal as what they're saying.
Right.
Like it might be like one of the characters kind of sounds like a person that you knew one time, or
Sure.
like you've been reading a lot about swords.
Mhm.
So I think it doesn't always have to be like, autobiographical or whatever, but it does make me curious, like if you can think of anything from your life that like you kind of subtly put into, I don't know, a comic or a series that people might not know, like, oh, this character came from this old janitor I knew or something.
Came from my mommy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like sometimes it can just come from an emotional place. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is a, my autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your point of view. And I feel like also like making art is in a way like you're getting to know yourself. You're getting to know how your brain works. And the only way you can do that is if you're constantly doing it. You have to constantly be drawing, constantly be making comics, trying to improve, and you can't be afraid to do something stupid or make a mistake or make something shitty. You just have to be able to pick yourself up and keep going until you are able to get it right. Like I still feel like I'm trying to get better. Like I still feel, I'm 54 and I still feel like, oh, I have to get better. I have to improve. I have to improve my storytelling. I have to improve my art, like I never feel truly satisfied with where I'm at artistically.
How do you keep pushing for like when you're like, okay, I want to improve? Do you have any specific ways of going about improving, or is it inspiration? I'm just like asking
It's
for
more like
people.
desperation. No, it's like
Keep going, Skillshare.com.
it's just like I just had a drive that I wanted to, I wanted to do this. I wanted to make it work. I wanted to be good at it. And I also liked doing it. I felt like I had a bit of a knack for it. So it was easy to just kind of like do it every day and always just, like I said, follow your inner compass as far as like what you want to work on. If you want to, do a funny comic or a serious comic or, a crazy sex drawing or whatever you feel like doing, just, you have to feel there has to be just like this feeling of like, I want to do that, like this excitement. And you shouldn't like wait for inspiration to happen. You just gotta keep working. You just keep like, I have a very sort of like 9 to 5 work schedule. I get up, eat breakfast, and then I just start working until like dinner time.
No breaks.
Yeah, 0 breaks. No water. I have like a cat of 9 tails that I beat myself with.
Yeah.
As I'm working, just to keep myself motivated.
Yeah, you can drink your own pee one time. I hear that it'll hydrate yourself, but any more than that, it's
yeah. We make our own water, so
we make our own water.
Yeah, so it's like I approach it like this is a job, and I take it seriously.
So are you still kind of like doing animation stuff, or when you what's the best way to say this? How do you think about and organize your day, and kind of like how do you make money? I guess how do you make money doing comics, and how much of that is in animation at this point? How do you think about how you fund your stuff for the year? Or I'm curious if you wouldn't mind just getting into a little bit of that stuff.
It can depend a lot of, like, when I first started, I was working for, like, I would get freelance gigs, so that's how I started working for Nickelodeon magazine, and then started working for Vice magazine, and there was these things called magazines back in, I just want to let the kids to know. I don't know if they know that word. But back in the 90s, there was these things called magazines that, had lots of illustration opportunities. And, if you're looking for illustration work, you can go to these magazines, and you can make good money depending what the magazine was.
It was on paper before trees were extinct, for those
right.
listening.
Before trees were extinct.
So then I didn't really have animation. I didn't get the Pig Goat Banana Cricket show until 2013. And that was like really my first introduction into animation. I'd never had any, like, I had done like a little bit of character design for people, but I'd never like had full on, I was just like thrown into the whole animation thing. And
I thought you worked on Mad before, the Mad show, as
a little bit. But even that, look, I did, like, I don't really have storyboarding skills. Like,
right.
I can thumbnail shit, because I would do thumbnails for when I was working on Looney Tunes, and a little bit on Pig Goat Banana Cricket, but yeah, I really don't have storyboarding skills.
Because I think that's interesting, because I feel like a lot of studios, they would rather have a writer as a showrunner than an artist. So
right.
it kind of works out for you, because you've been writing this whole time, right?
Well, sort of like because when I did the stuff for Mad, those were just like little teeny skits that I would like thumbnail for them. But then, yeah, I still was an idiot. Like, I still had no idea what I was doing. And then once I got on the Pig Goat Banana Cricket, that was sort of like going to animation school and getting paid for it, which was pretty cool. But also learning how to write a script.
Yeah.
Like, what makes a script work. And Pig Goat Banana Cricket was a little tricky too, because the way it wasn't set up like a normal cartoon. It was 4 individual stories that then had to kind of like come together at the very end. So it was like a 30-minute show of 4 individual stories come together, like, and they all had to sort of like, like in sort of like a Seinfeldy way, have to come together at the end. So it wasn't a very traditional cartoon. So it was definitely, but it was still very challenging, and it was a very good learning experience. It definitely taught me a lot about storytelling for TV. And it also gave me a lot of confidence in being able to write and voice my opinion, working with other people. Like, it was just a great experience overall. I feel like I'm totally veering away from the original question of how I make money.
No, it's okay. I mean, that might be part of your journey, because I think the context is that you do a lot of different things in different places, and you've had different experiences. So we're getting to,
Right.
like, what's your job? What's your job basically is. We need to talk about this other stuff.
But I guess right now I have no animation job. I am currently just doing comics. I don't make a lot of money doing that. And there's no more magazines now, so the landscape is very limited for work, but I do get a little bit of freelance stuff, and I sell artwork, and I just put out a new comic. So I put out comics and stuff. So, I definitely miss those days of, the money of having my own show, and making that money was really amazing. But yeah, those days are gone.
I think that's interesting too, because I feel like a lot of people have this idea that once you're a showrunner, you have it made, and somehow you're at the peak of.
That was always weird to me, because I even when I got the job at Nickelodeon, I never felt like, I can kick back and now I'm a big success. I felt like, I was given this opportunity, and it's now up to me to make sure that this works. And yeah, and I'm sure, when you were talking to JJ too, and JJ's had several shows.
Mm-hmm.
He pitches so much. I feel like he develops and pitches more stuff than anybody that I know.
You're probably right. He's a pitch maniac.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's more difficult now than ever. And I also do feel like my name and the nature of what I do also kind of limits the opportunities. But when I first got the Pig Open and a Cricket job, one of the stipulations was that they can't use they can't call me Johnny Ryan. I had to be referred to as Jay Ryan. And I thought that was a little confusing. And I thought it almost put more, made it more of a bigger deal. Why is this guy changing his name? But then I also thought,
but JJ's working on Shrek and stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like
but also I would, I did the show with the cartoonist Dave Cooper, and Dave's work was far more I had crazy shit too, but Dave's work was he had his. His stuff was very kind of sexual and creepy, but they were okay with him. but for whatever reason, I was trouble. But ultimately, when the show, right before the show got on the air, they were like, you know what? Who cares? Just put your name on there. And so they put my name on, and of course nobody gave a shit, so it didn't even matter.
I think that's so funny on a lot of levels, because, well, first of all, like you said, there's the Dave Cooper element where it's he also has art that is titillating, I guess. And then it's well, then why are they even entertaining the idea of picking up the show? And also I guess, how did you get in touch with the execs, or how did that whole thing come about? Because they, it went through enough steps that they were we like these guys and we like their show.
It took a few years. I'm gonna say that we started the process in 2008 or something.
Whoa.
Oh wow. Wow. Mm-hmm.
But Dave Cooper and we both worked for Nickelodeon magazine, and Dave, we kind of met at the comic festival Angoulême in France, and we became friendly, and Dave was like, hey, do you want to collaborate on these comics for Nickelodeon magazine? And I was like, okay. And so I would write little stories. He would give me 3 or 4 characters, and I would write a little 2-page story. And we did that a few times. And I guess Dave somehow got those stories over to someone at Nickelodeon, the TV network, and they liked them, and so I guess we got a development deal. So we were put into development. Originally, it was called Pig Goat Banana Mantis, and so we were put in development, and we went through the whole thing. We did a board. We had Nick Cross.
Oh yeah,
Nick Cross boarded the whole thing, and we pitched. You pitched the board, and you could sort of tell like they aren't into this. And then, but we were able to. We made like this little animated trailer that was just like a minute or so, and so when they initially passed on our show, but they let us have this trailer and they let us post it online, and people really loved it. Like people were really kind of going crazy, like, oh, this is really funny and this is really cool. And then I think that there was a change of the guard at Nickelodeon. A new guy came in, Russell something, and he was like, and at the time too, I think they were doing like mostly like DreamWorks. They had all these DreamWorks shows like Kung Fu Panda the show, Megamind the show, and I think he wanted to kind of switch things up and start the whole like Nickelodeon original cartoon thing again. So they decided to bring us back into development. Yeah, so we had to go through the whole process again. And that's when the whole idea of like having like the 4 stories that coalesce into one, the big finale at the end. Initially, I wasn't too into that because I was just like, this sounds really gimmicky. I mean, we don't have to do this every show, do we? And they were like, oh, no, you don't have to do it every. This is just for this. It's like, oh, good.
That's such a hard thing to keep up. 4 stories that intertwine.
It was.
It's so hard, especially for an 11. That was an 11-minute show, right?
No, it was a 26-minute show.
Oh, 26. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, I feel like 4 stories in 11. It's like, woo. Yeah.
So we were able to, we did the finished cartoon, and based off of that, we got the show. I think Nick Cross was involved in that one as well. And they also brought on a co-writer for me, this guy, David Sachs, who was a writer on The Simpsons. Like he was a writer on, I think, like season 3 or 4 of The Simpsons. And then
did he have a literature degree though?
He was a Harvard guy.
Oh,
I'm trying to remember what his degree was in though. Like it might have been like history or something.
He beat you.
But
he beat you.
He beat you. Degree first degree.
But he also like he wrote on that show Third Rock from the Sun too. So he was mostly like a sitcom guy. But we got along pretty well, and yeah, we wrote that pilot together, and they liked it and they picked it up.
What's getting paired with a writer like? Do you like read over some of their stuff and are you like do you have the option like, hey, this person isn't like my style? Like what's that courting a writer?
It can depend. I've been in situations that have been really cool, and I've been in situations that have fucking sucked shit. So it can go either way. You just have to, like, it's almost just like picking a roommate, you have to make sure that the person that you're working with is, easygoing, cool, funny, and a joke machine. That's something that I feel like is very important. Like you can't, if you're going to be a writer, or I feel like anything, especially in TV, like you can't be sensitive. Like you have to be able to let go of stuff. And if somebody's like, if you pitch an idea and they don't like it, it doesn't work, let's come up with another idea. You can't be precious about your ideas. You just gotta like muscle through and fucking crank shit out. You gotta be a joke machine.
So, like going from comics now to animation to doing stuff in magazines, what do you feel like starting with writing prepared you for the most? or yeah.
It just helped. I felt like it helped me just come up with ideas, like come up with jokes. Like I remember, like as soon as I got the Pig Open and a Cricket job, like I was, and we had done that first pilot episode, and I was just like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like I put everything I had in that pilot, and now I got to come up with 24 more of these things. Fucking forget it. Like I was like I was like super anxious. I was super, I didn't know what to do. And so I just like, I sat down and I just like started drawing crazy characters, and just like, I basically just like created like, 50 wacky characters and put them on a bulletin board, and that became sort of a template of like what we were going to do. Like, so I feel like a lot of the times it's just like this panic that sets in. Like I always sort of feel like I have to, like I never sort of kick back and think like, I made it. Like I'm always just kind of like, how do I stay here? Like, how do I keep this going?
Yeah, because like, can you tell us a little bit about like what your day-to-day or week-to-week was like as a showrunner, like kind of like the type of meetings, the type of decisions you were making, and where did you spend the most time overall?
Well, it was like the situation at Pig Open and a Cricket was, I don't know if it was a usual one, because again, it was my first time doing any TV. So I not only was like a showrunner, but I was also like figuring out how do you fucking do this? And when I first got there, I felt like I was trying to latch on to someone else who knew what they were doing and who could sort of guide me. And after about 6 months, I felt like nobody knows what they're doing. Like nobody here has any idea what they're doing. They're all like scared. They're all like nervous that they're going to be fired at any minute. So I was kind of like, man, I like all these people are like, they're driving around and they have homes and they have cars, but they're just as stupid as I am. Like, well, I can do this. Like my confidence started to build, but ultimately I like the sort of labor was sort of divided, because Dave Cooper and I were ultimately like, we were the creators. So Dave was in charge of for the most part, he was in charge of the art side of things. Mm-hmm. Like he was in charge of the design, the way the show looked. And I was primarily writing the scripts we had a, group of writers and David Sachs. And so, so I was kind of mostly in charge of that stuff. But we also, as writers, we would have to sort of work with the board artists to make sure that, they were following the script, because it was a very, very scripted show. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we had to kind of keep on top of that. And I mean, I guess sometimes I would sort of, like I mentioned before, like creating that kind of wall of characters. Like I would try to, like, it wasn't like I was trying to step on Dave's toes, but I was like, hey, I have a cool idea for a character. Let's do this. And you can Dave Cooperify the character however you want.
It's an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also made a little difficult too, because Dave was unable to work down here in Los Angeles. He was in Canada.
That's what I thought too, and so that's why I was always wondering how involved he was, because I think when you guys were making Pig Goat Banana Cricket, I think I was in Nickelodeon. I was on the very first seasons of The Loud House, and I don't think Dave was around, and I was like,
well, he definitely wasn't like in the building, but he was doing his stuff remotely. Like he would be in all the meetings, but he would be like zooming in, or I don't even know if they had Zoom then or whatever, Skype, whatever the fuck it was. So he would sort of attend meetings electronically and talk to people electronically and whatever. But ultimately, I think that if you do that, you have to be like a super alpha personality to be able to get that done. I feel like there's a lot that you miss when you're not in the building every day dealing with people and talking to people. You know, a lot of stuff happens between the meetings that, you know, you're not going to know if you're somewhere in another country.
That's so true. Okay, that's something that like took me a really long time to understand as somebody working in animation and trying to understand why people want to be in-house versus remote. And there's like a thing that was difficult, that would have been difficult to figure out if it hadn't happened like in passing or at a lunch or like in between two meetings.
I'm trying to think, because that was the other thing too, is that like, you know, you're in charge of a show, so you're dealing with all these employees. Like
Yeah.
when I worked with Pete Browngardt on Looney Tunes, Pete had already worked on Uncle Grandpa. He had been working in animation forever. So when he was hiring people, he knew the exact fucking team he wanted to put together to make the show. I had no fucking idea what I was doing, and we were hiring people just randomly based off of their portfolios, and then sort of as time would go on, and you'd realize like, I think this person's nuts. or like or the person's like, you know, homeless and they're sleeping in their office. Like it's sort of like these things start to happen and you're just kind of like, what the fuck? Like I'm just trying to make this show and like I'm dealing with all these like lunatics. Like I feel like the first season was very troubled, and I felt like it almost took us a whole season to finally like hone the best possible team. We you know, because we kept kind of running into people that couldn't hack it, couldn't figure it out, didn't like working with us, didn't, you know, for whatever reason it just wasn't clicking. That was a big problem. Like those would usually be like big problems, whether they were board artists, you know, or directors or writers, or like in every aspect, like there was trouble that had to be solved. And yeah, I sort of feel like, yeah, when I worked on Looney Tunes, Pete had the experience, so he knew how to put a real crackerjack team together. And yeah, I didn't have those abilities when I started.
If you were to put a team together now for a show, what do you think you would do differently from what you did on Pig Goat?
I would probably I would definitely just like make a beeline for those artists and writers that I've worked with before that I enjoyed working with.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is so important. If you are able to get that, you know, just really great team together, everybody's on the same page. Because that's the other thing too, is like when you get a show and you're working on a show, there's this feeling of paranoia, like, do these people really want to be here? Like, or do they just sort of see me like, yeah, this guy's just going to be here for like a couple of months before they can his ass anyway, and then they're going to put me over on SpongeBob when it's done. Like, there's that type of artist that you have to be sort of wary of. You want somebody who's there, who likes what you're doing, who's excited about it, and wants to help you make it great, and not just somebody who is there to cash a paycheck. Because the thing is too, is that like when the show's over, you're out of work. This person is probably just going to keep moving through the system. They'll be put on the next fucking shitty show where you're just going to have to go home and beat off.
Sure.
Let's pretend now that like you can staff your show, your new imaginary show, with like, let's pretend like 70% people you've already worked with before, but now you have 30% of people that, you know, like you're going to have to hire people you don't know. Is there
now that I sort of like, I know, like, okay, so like if I hire people that I've worked with before and they liked, and I'm lucky to get them on my show, and then I could be like, hey, can you recommend people?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, who have you worked for? Oh, this guy's great. You'll love him. This guy's really cool. I mean, that's the best you can do. But just
Yeah.
I found like not knowing anybody, not knowing anything, and hiring people cold, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes that's just what you got to do because that's just the position you're in. I do forgive myself for that, but it really pays off to know the people that you're bringing onto your show, at least on a working basis.
Mm-hmm.
To know that they're not insane.
Yeah, it helps.
No, totally.
What was it like working on Looney Tunes?
It was great. It was great team. Like I said, Pete was a great guy, great boss. Like, I feel like I'm usually somebody who doesn't like working for people. Like, I like doing my own fucking thing, and I don't like people telling me what to do. But in the case of Pete, I like Pete, and I liked working for him. I liked his attitude. I liked the team of people that he put together. We have very similar sensibilities and senses of humor. So it was a real dream. I mean, if you're gonna work for somebody, and you have to work for some corporate, bullshit. It was good. It was good.
I think it's funny that you have on your link tree, you have a profile picture of Daffy with the gun to his head.
Right.
And when I saw it, it just reminded me of because I worked briefly at WB on a Looney Tunes movie that unfortunately got canceled. It was
Which
called
one?
Bye Bye Bunny.
No.
Yeah, it was happening. It was happening around the same time as the day the Earth blew up.
Okay.
But I think you guys were a little bit further ahead, and I think for us, because ours. Wait, hold on. You guys is the Earth the day the Earth blew up is also a musical or no?
No.
No.
No musicals.
Yeah, so we were a musical, and maybe I don't know
Okay.
if that was part of the reason why. I don't know. Anyway, but we ended up watching a bunch of Looney Tunes just because to kind of and we watched a lot of the early ones, and so that kind of ties back into the irreverent stuff. But also as a child, I watched a lot of Looney Tunes, and there are so many self-harm jokes in these that I personally think are hilarious because I don't know,
Well, it was interesting when we first began. It was just when we first started, it was just Pete, me, and David Gemmell, and there was still this question of what can we do? What can we get away with? What are we allowed to do? The previous Looney Tunes was literally wrapping up and moving out. They were just finishing up their last couple of things while we were moving in, and I don't think that they were allowed to get away with a lot or much. But with us, we were kind of well, what can we do? And Pete was smart because he was just okay, we're going to do a focus group, and we're going to pick the 3 of the most violent Looney Tunes cartoons we can find. We're going to show them to a group of kids and see what happens. So they showed them to the kids. The kids fucking loved them. Just they loved them. They thought they were hilarious. And they said, one of the notes was that, some of the gun stuff was a little scary to the kids. But other than that, the fact that the characters would get brutalized and then just jump right back up and be okay, they thought that was hilarious. They thought that was what made them fun. And so that sort of opened the door for we can basically do whatever we wanted, except we couldn't. I don't think we could do handguns and rifles. That's why in that first one where I don't know if you saw the musical one that David Gemmell put together of Elmer Fudd chasing Bugs Bunny with a scythe. And it was all on the news, Joe Rogan and shit, and they were they took away Elmer Fudd's gun. What kind of country is this?
His rights.
And it's just,
how do we defend his rights in the courts? Is there rights for cartoon characters? And if there's not, we got to draft some up.
And then people were blaming Pete, like it was his decision. It
Oh,
was so stupid. So yeah, we weren't we weren't able to use like guns, and we could do like TNT and axes and chainsaws, like cannons, like hit people on the head with a hammer or a mallet or something. But we just couldn't do guns, and we couldn't do there's a lot of alcoholism in the old Looney Tunes. We couldn't do any of that. No smoking, of course. There's lots of smoking.
One of my favorite gifs is Sylvester the cat, and he's like chain smoking cigarettes and with a cup of coffee. This is
He's trying to stay awake.
Yeah, it's so funny because he feels really bad because I think it's so funny because there's a lot of old Looney Tunes where a character feels like extreme guilt and they like cry and cry and cry and they hate themselves about it, and then it turns out whoever was the character that they're like feeling guilty about is fine, and then it's just like keeps going on. And I think Sylvester was like something like that, where like I don't know, those are just I don't know. I think they're just so
like those cartoons are like these perfect little cinematic gems. Like everything that you need to know about writing a joke, it's all in there. And it's like these like from the writing to the animation to the completely batshit voice acting from Mel Blanc, and then the music, the Carl Stalling music, just everything is just like this perfect diamond of animation excellence. Everybody needs to watch every single one of those cartoons. That's the perfect place to learn.
And it's funny too because they often you'll often see some Looney Tunes that riff on the same idea across the years, and it often gets kind of like perfected across like the different like riffs on the same joke.
And then as it gets into like the late 50s and 60s, it gets worse.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. When is Chuck Jones? Because Chuck Jones is it's after that, right? I do love Chuck Jones. Who's your favorite era of Looney Tunes?
I feel like I love most all of them except for Chuck Jones. Like I like
No way.
I like Tex Avery because I feel like Chuck Jones kind of like because he was like the last surviving Looney Tunes director. So like his incarnations of like the smug Bugs Bunny and the angry Daffy Duck, like those suddenly became like these are the characters, and I preferred sort of the Bob Clampett, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, the Tex Avery Daffy Duck. Like I think I liked the crazier shit, but I also liked Robert McKimson's stuff. It's all great. It's just all great.
Were you it's interesting that you ended up in Looney Tunes. Was it ever an inspiration for you early on with like your comics work, or was it just kind of a chance?
No, absolutely. When I was a kid, I was obsessed. My friends and I were obsessed with those cartoons, and we would quote them and watch them over and over again. So the fact that I got to work on them is pretty amazing. But I feel like I wish people could see them. Like I wish more people would sort of, check them out. I feel like they weren't promoted very well, and because I feel like what we did is probably as close as it's ever going to get to what happened with the original cartoons. It's never going to be as close to what they did ever again.
It's so hard every time that Warner Brother wants to revive Looney Tunes. And I feel like this is something they've tried to do for decades. I feel like probably the last successful iteration of Looney Tunes, I guess, in recent memory, besides The Day the Earth Blew Up, is maybe like Space Jam. But I feel like there's this thing where everybody's always trying to figure out how to make them marketable again and cool. And
well, it's hard because we're living like the original Looney Tunes are so angry, and it's about these characters who are just like trying to
trying to kill each other all the time.
Kill each other and beat the shit out of each other. And, you know, it's a duck hunting and rabbit murder and you know, if you pitch that, if you went to like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, okay, so this is a show about like this guy wants to murder this rabbit, they'd be like, yeah, that's not happening. You're not making a show about that. You can't, it's not going to happen. But the thing is like we still like look at those cartoons as sort of like, and we revere them as like, oh, these are like these great cartoons, but we like everything that's going on in them. So like now when they try to bring them back, like they got to be friends and they got to like get along and they have to, and that's sort of like, that's not funny. Like those guys, all those guys knew, like they were almost like these joke scientists. They knew exactly how to write a joke and make it work.
Yeah.
And then we, you know, when these executives come in and be like, well, maybe this is like it's a little nasty and we need to clean it up and, you know, then kids will like it. And they don't. And then they're like scratching their heads like, why don't kids like this? Because it's not fucking funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because Teen Titans Go is often kind of, and Gumball, The Amazing World of Gumball, there are cartoons that people tend to say like, oh, the characters are mean or like it's kind of like crass and not funny, but the kids love them. So
but I feel like, you know, again, like listening to people are wrong. So when they say things, oh, this is mean, it's just like, yeah, it's mean. Go, if you don't like it, go watch something else. Like, why does everything have to just like there's this overwhelming, like everything has to be, we have to pretend like everything's nice and everything's fine and all the movies have to be about stuff that's nice and everything, you know, we don't have to hurt anybody's feelings and we have to make sure everybody feels good. And it's all just fucking bullshit. And it's not funny and it's not interesting. Storytelling is about conflict and comedy is about conflict. And when you remove those things, you don't have anything. It's just boring.
do you have what's your take on why that happened? Like, and it can be, you know, it's just your opinion. It doesn't have to be like a research paper or whatever. But like, what do you think for you, especially because you've seen that happen with the underground comic scene as well. So it's happening in TV, it's happening with comics, the kind of like everything happy and nice. What's your take on why
that's going on? Like I said earlier, I think it's just like this kind of internet hive mind mentality. Like like cancel culture and all that stuff plays this role into like, you know, you have to follow the rules. You have to do what we say, or you're not going to get work, or we're not going to let you into our club. We're not going to hire you. We're not going to, you know, you're going to be kicked out of society. You're not going to be able to make money, you know. And it's also like about like corporate shit. Like, oh, you know, you don't want to make a Looney Tunes movie where people are killing each other, because then this person's not going to go see it and buy the Donald or the Daffy Duck cereal or whatever. It's people are afraid. They're afraid to mix it up. They're afraid to upset people. And like you said, like people are like, oh, the Teen Titans is mean. It's just like, you know, and then usually the people who are complaining are the ones who are like the fucking loudest. And it just takes one person to be like, oh, this is, you don't like this. Okay, we got to do what this person says, even though they're a loser who fucking has no ability to create anything.
So I also want to make sure, because I've been forgetting recently to ask questions from our listeners. We have questions from our listeners.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones.
Let's go. Our patron Puzzle Glum asks, what was the hardest thing about writing a movie? And what was your favorite thing?
You mean the Looney Tunes movie?
Yeah, I think they're talking about the Looney Tunes movie.
Well, that was kind of like, it's a very specific form of writing for a movie, because somebody wrote the script before me, and then I did a pass on it. And then after me, there was probably like another 20 people that did their pass on it. So it was just about like, so I was sort of just like building off of or adjusting, enhancing whatever the guy before me wrote. So I wasn't just kind of like writing the film from like whole cloth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I watched the movie the other day. Although I missed the first like maybe 30 minutes, but I don't think I recognized a single thing in it that I remember writing. So it's funny when people are like, "Oh, he wrote the Looney Tunes movie," and I'm like, "Okay, if you want to think that."
Well, that's a harsh reality about working in movies in general.
Yeah.
There's so many revisions and different versions that.
Well,
half the time
especially
your
in
stuff's-
animation, I think, like because not only do you have the writers, but the board artists are coming in with their stuff, and you know, there's just, and then the executives are coming in with like their ideas. There definitely was a lot more of, you know, this is just from talking to Pete. There definitely was a lot. The executives had their hands deeper in this project than the television cartoon,
Mm-hmm.
and there was lots of like when I read the initial script, there was like so much about like Porky and Daffy's friendship. Like, oh, we're friends. Are we still friends? Yeah, we're friends. What happened to our friendship? Like constantly like checking in. Like I feel like when you're watching a kid's animated movie and you hear that word friend or friendship, you know that's like a corporate buzzword that they're forcing them to put in the movie. It's like this is the thing that the execs want. You want to make sure that everybody's friends and everybody's nice and everybody feels
I smashed
good.
you with a hammer. We're friends though. Yeah, no, we're still good. We're still
I'm
cool.
only doing that because I was trying to save you from that mosquito.
I was just lashing out.
I'm your friend.
And I have to change my toxic behavior and become better friends with you.
Yeah, like there's this almost like this, like just very like every kids movie is like a therapy session. Just like, oh, we gotta be friends, and you have to learn to be a friend, and you have to be yourself, and you matter, you're important. We need to improve your self-esteem. It's just like, just kick somebody in the balls or fall down the stairs. Like everything has to be like a fucking motivational lecture.
We need the movie
like
where
all these movies think that like every kid has like incredibly low self-esteem.
what I want to see is the movie where Wile E. the Coyote gets called out for his bad behavior as a toxic individual. He gets canceled and he has to go into exile, go to therapy, and work on himself for a few years before he can and kind of make a public apology video, like that kind of stuff.
Or Tom and Jerry go to couples therapy.
Better than Wiley, Pepe Le Pew. I actually, you know,
That was the one character we weren't allowed to do.
I
tried to talk to them about Pepe Le Pew in a pitch meeting once. I was like, listen, I have some ideas for that, and they were like, we don't even want to touch Pepe Le Pew. Like,
Well,
they were like, we can't even.
From what I hear, trying to remember that comedian's name, Dave Chappelle.
Mm.
He was very interested in doing a Pepe Le Pew project, and he was talking to them for quite a long time about it. But I don't even know. Like I even had like, I was even trying to come up with angles of like ways to make it work. Like if he sort of like, and you know how he always sort of falls in love with the cat who he thinks is a skunk. Like I was trying to think, well, maybe if he like falls, like there's an ice sculpture or a balloon, like he starts just falling in love with inanimate objects and starts like, you know, trying to get them to fall in love with him. But if you watch those the original Pepe Le Pew cartoons, he's like the fucking Terminator. Like he just won't stop. He's like a sexual Terminator who will not take no for an answer. He doesn't stop. He's just like, he's just like, I'm going to fuck this cat and nobody's going to stop me. And he just like, the cat can't kill him.
There's even a joke. I think there's one of them. I know there's one of them where like she finally like hides inside of like a glass cabinet and he can't get to her. So he takes out a gun and he's like, well, if
my
it's the way it is, I
Oh my
and then she
God.
comes out to save him. It's crazy.
Jesus.
It's
Yeah,
when I was working on Looney Tunes on the floor of the Pinnacle building, there was an enormous Pepe Le Pew statue,
oh yeah.
like all the way down at the end of like on the far side of the floor, just kind of hidden. But it's just like they're just trying to like hide this huge Pepe Le Pew statue. They don't want anybody to see the statue to stalking and rape that they had in the building.
Oh my God. I feel like there's a lot you can in writing cartoons. I feel like there's a lot you can get away with as long as you have someone with the Pepe Le Pew. Like for instance, if he was like all right, we're giving you a chaperone basically, and you have a chaperone who's able to be like violent with him, like, you know, can hit him with a hammer every time he messes up or whatever. Like having somebody who's being like rehabilitated, and
He's got a parole officer,
and a little bit of like but
it sounds like Clockwork Orange.
Well, essentially like
that would be good. Like just do a Clockwork Orange cartoon with Pepe Le Pew.
That is
like every time he gets a boner, like he just like
but
starts to vomit.
basically like having someone in there who's the voice of reason, like, listen, there's some parts about this that are still funny, so we're gonna have you do it, but then you have to get smashed before you can do anything, and kind of have that be like, listen, this is what happens when you try to fucking be a creep, but you could still do the violent thing to him and then have it anyway. So I was trying to go through the mental gymnastics of and I pitched that in a meeting once, and they were like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna touch Pepe Le Pew for a while.
Yeah, there was just
understandable.
Like,
Yeah,
it didn't matter what angle we took. They were just like, we're not even doing it. We don't. And then Speedy Gonzalez was another one that like, yeah, you can't do it. Even though I think he's fairly beloved in the Spanish community.
That's also community. What I've heard too. That people were angry, like you took away our like one guy.
Because
and then they tried
smart.
to make him cool. They tried to make him look like Speed Racer and shit. And like it's just like, this isn't working, man. It's just like he was working just fine. Everybody loves him. Why don't you just fucking keep it the way it is?
Speedy, I was really sad because I really liked him. I don't know. I think he was aspirational actually, because he was like really
he was a superhero. Like he always won. He always defeated Sylvester or Daffy, whoever he was fighting against, and he always got the girl at the end.
Yeah, I feel like you would just need
Slowpoke Rodriguez was cool too.
Yeah,
I think because of that one was a little bit like we don't know about that one.
He was fun,
but yeah, I don't know. It's I know it's frustrating for people when the times change and it's like, oh, okay, like that cartoon character isn't acceptable anymore. It reminds me of Johnny Bravo too. Like Johnny Bravo was like a modernized Pepe Le Pew, like, and I think probably has some of the similar stuff going on.
I still love Johnny Bravo though. I feel like because I think Johnny Bravo, they managed to do the thing like what they do in anime where like even though he's being a pervert, he gets punched right away. Usually he gets the comeuppance right away.
Yeah.
So for kids watching it, it's more clear than Pepe, where in Pepe it's like
he kisses on her for a while.
Yeah. And he doesn't get like hurt or anything. So it makes sense. Whereas like a lot of like 80s, 90s anime, when you would have like the main character who's like very kind of suave and like or perverted, I guess, depending on your point of view, like they would get hit with the hammer right away in a very Looney Tunes kind of way, and it does make it go down a little easier. Then you know, like, okay, it's a joke. Because there's
something about Pepe. Like I said earlier, Pepe is just like the cartoon is all about that.
Yeah,
and he doesn't stop.
It's like a Terminator
ever.
Yeah, like Terminator is so funny.
it's kind of crazy. I mean, even as a kid, I don't know if he was really like I didn't look forward to seeing his cartoons on TV.
Yeah,
but I feel that way about most Chuck Jones stuff. But yeah, that one in particular, like I just felt like it was kind of the same joke over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first cartoon I've heard about Johnny Ryan trying to cancel, and and maybe now you can empathize because that's how you felt for Pepe Le Pew. How
I'm just trying to cancel because I didn't think it was funny.
I got you.
But we also weren't allowed to. Well, we tried to. I don't know if you guys remember the Three Bears, the family.
Oh yeah,
where it was like the little tiny angry dad and the big son and the kind of the drunk mother, and we tried to figure it out. And I was like, "There's no way they're going to let us do this. This is just like this fucking angry dad beating the shit out of his son. Like they're not going to let us do this." That's all the whole show was. It was brutal, and we gave it to this board artist, and he pulled it off. Like he was able to do it where he kind of made it so the dad was getting the brunt of the abuse. And cause I definitely was like, I was very dubious at first, like, oh, they're not going to be able to do it. And then when he showed me what he did, I was like, wow, you did it. Like this thing, this feels totally passable. Like but they still were like, yeah, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it. It's got that legacy that we're not going to be able to get past.
Yeah. Do we have some other listener questions?
We do. Let's see. Kitty Fries asks, or from Patreon asks, what was the most surprising thing you discovered when you transitioned from TV to feature?
Well, my feature experience was so limited. It was only like 2 weeks of me working on that script. Like I wasn't really involved in more than that. Well, I moved to Beverly Hills and I bought a mansion, and so yeah, my experience on the feature was almost non-existent. The TV show was far more engaging and fulfilling, and I feel like we were able to really maintain the spirit of the original cartoons in the television series that we did. Probably more so than the movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like so we have another question from Weird078, lots of number on Twitter, who asks, Excellent. Was it like working on a Looney Tunes feature film as opposed to Looney Tunes cartoon shorts? So I'm in kind of like riffing off what you just said, where you could kind of keep the spirit more in a TV show. Did you have a vision of what you could bring to a project with a grander scale? I guess you just...
I mean, I had a vision of what we could do, but whether, they didn't listen to it. Like I like watching the movie the other day, I was just like, I kept just thinking like, I would have done this and I would have done this and this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was more creatively involved in the television show than I was in the feature.
And we have a really good question from Philippi Super, because that's something I also wonder about sometimes. What is the best way to write a script for something as cartoony as Looney Tunes? Because like, how do you put it on paper? I feel like sometimes like it can be hard to write it in a script format.
With me, like even when I was doing the TV show, like I work better visually. And, even when I was doing like, I was working on a cartoon with Eric Andre for Adult Swim. And we were in development, and as I said, I don't really know how to storyboard, but I thumbnailed the whole thing. And I find that like when I'm working on these types of animated projects, thumbnailing the whole thing out first definitely helps. And then building a script or something or a outline off of the thumbnails is better. It works for me anyway. But a lot of the stuff, like, especially Looney Tunes, like lots of visual gags that like writing it out just doesn't have that same vibe of like when you're drawing somebody getting kicked in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Or, doing like a backflip somersault off a cliff into a pool of piranha. And bear traps and stuff. So, yeah, it's more fun to draw all those sort of cartoony, funny scenes out first, and then writing it all out for the squares to read.
How do you, is there a way that you try to write it out to get the point across that someone might not normally think of? Like you just try to be really descriptive about
You gotta,
how funny the image is?
you got to, because you're going to be handing it off to a board artist, so you want to be as clear as possible. How, like, however long that takes for you to explain how the coyote's body twists into this formation in the catapult to go over to this, and the feeder over here, and the, you want to make sure that, as much as you want the board artist to really capture what you're talking about. But yeah, I would, if I thumbnailed something, I would give the board artist the outline and my thumbnails to kind of help them sort of see what I was talking about.
Yeah, it's good to hear that there's also this possibility. Like if it's like on a production, you can just kind of like, well, I guess when you're handing it off to the artist, you can do that. But when you're like turning it into the exec,
and I felt like that definitely gave me a little bit of an edge as a writer on an animated project, because I can draw, and I can draw funny. So I am able to, I can both write the idea out and I can draw it for them as well, so they can see what I'm talking about. So it's extra understandable.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We're all done with the listener questions, but we do have one question from that we asked on the show. Do you experience creative block? And if you do, how do you deal with it?
I mean, I definitely experience times of greater creativity than others, but I feel like ultimately it's just not acceptable. It's just like you have to work through it. There's always something to draw, no matter what it is. Even if it's just like something you see in the news that day, or some book you read that you liked, some scene from a book that you've read, some scene from a movie that you like, some sexual position you want to draw that you want to jerk off to, there's an infinite number of things that would be fun to draw if you like drawing. It's just a matter of wanting to do it. And yeah, creative block, writer's block, all those blocks, unacceptable. You have to work through them.
You also talked about drawing the 50, when you had a little bit of a block, you drew the 50 guys or whatever for
well, it wasn't so much as a block, it was more just like I got real scared. Like I was just sort of like, what am I going to do? I dumped everything I had into that one show, the first show. What am I going to do? And then I just was like, I forced myself to I got to come up with more ideas, and just forcing myself to shit out all these characters and story premises. Like I really kind of felt like I went to work, and it came out of a place of fear.
Terror. We should change the name of the show to Creative Crippling Fear, and that's the titular question that we ask.
Yeah.
I like that. Crippling fear.
But I feel like there is an aspect of that in my work in general. It's just sort of I don't, if I'm not working, if I'm not drawing something, especially if I see I'm running out of money, there's definitely this feeling what am I doing sitting around? I can't just sit around. I got to fucking work, and even if I'm working all day and I don't make a dime, I still feel like I'm not wasting my time. I have to keep working.
In your experience, how many drawings turn into $1?
That's a complicated question.
How many drawings do I have to do before I make $1?
Well, because then it can depend on your level of talent.
True.
It can depend on what you're drawing. There's certain subjects sell better than others. Yeah, there's so many variables.
So maybe one of your drawings is like, is it like 1/69th of a dollar, or is it like one drawing is like $69?
Then it depends on like how big of a drawing. Like we're talking about like this, like a
Yeah,
real
probably.
like size of a quarter, or like a
I
or
think
half dollar,
if-
or like
If we
like
were
a
carrying
full,
around like money, but it was just drawings that we did, but it's the size of money,
Mhm.
you know?
Oh, if I had a piece of paper, a dollar-shaped piece of paper with my
Yeah.
drawings on it,
Yeah. It's a
I could
strip.
probably,
You're paying with
Yeah.
things with like an actual like 4-panel strip.
yeah, I think I could probably get like a plate of spaghetti.
Yeah.
Oh, and then with another one, I could probably get a meatball.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
2 drawings.
two drawings.
Two drawings.
It's
I get
funny
spaghetti
that
and it.
spaghetti and a meatball are both the same price to you. I like how you're thinking about the price of spaghetti compared to meatball.
Well, like a meatball's got to be like a little pricier, right? Because it takes a little bit more.
Okay.
It's probably a little bit more effort. You got to kill something.
Okay. we're factoring in the guy who had to kill it too.
And then the meatball tariffs.
Mhm.
The meatball.
All the tariffs that Trump's going to put on the
Yeah,
meatballs.
the hunter tariffs, and how hard it's going to be if his guns were taken away to kill whatever the meatball used to be. You know,
Exactly.
do you have to do it with his bare hands? Higher
Yeah,
rate.
got to strangle it.
Yeah. Did you have another question, Vee? Sorry.
I should put that on the package of meatball. Each one of these cows was strangled.
I had I wanted to ask, so you in one of the interviews you did, you said, as long as my life sucks, my work will continue to stay funny.
I don't know. When did I say that?
It's really, I just thought that was really funny. Let me check. I don't know if there's a time.
That's why Eminem lost his charm for me. I can tell he got too happy. His life got too good.
And so I was gonna ask you, do you believe, and this is just like a philosophy question, like, do you believe an artist has to be miserable to be inspired and make good work?
Or is it just you?
Well, that's an age-old question.
Yeah.
I do think that good work does come from a painful place, or at least like you're angry about something, like something's upsetting you, and you need to express that in some way.
Yeah.
But I don't think that necessarily has to be across the board. I think there's artists that are able to, they're not all that angry, but they're able to make work that's still interesting. But I guess, at least for me, most of the artists I like are those types of artists. Like they've come from a place where like they were angry. They were really angry, and they wanted to tell people about it.
I mean, a little bit of a full circle moment. I think that we might have found the positive side of the changing times. It's that if you didn't have people constantly coming for your neck trying to cancel you, would you start being happy, and then would your comics start to suffer? And so maybe that's the silver lining.
I don't know.
It's what there
believe
is.
me, I've thought about that. It's something that I like.
Oh wow.
I'm thinking, if I don't know, but I do feel like I'm old enough now where I have a lot of misery to, like, in my past to dwell on.
You've been saving. You've been saving it up for a rainy day.
I've banked a lot of misery that I could use going forward. So I feel like I'm ready to not be miserable anymore.
Change of heart. Yeah.
Nice.
That's
always
good. Yeah. Well, on this positive note, maybe we could end this creative block. Johnny, thank you so much for being our guest and sharing your story.
Sure.
Do you have anything you want to plug? Anything coming out that the listeners can buy, support, throw money at?
I do have a Patreon. If you want to read my comics, I post a comic page every day on Patreon. You can buy my books either on my Big Cartel site or through Fantagraphics or Mansion Press. I just put out a new book called Wicked Retarded Comics that's available on my site. You can follow me on Instagram. There's always all kinds of ways you can support me until I get another job.
So shout out to the listeners for supporting us and supporting Johnny. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting online.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to our Discord community. But you can also support us for free by liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, all that good stuff. Click the link in the description of this episode to follow Johnny on all socials and to find our Patreon. I've been your host, Vee.
And I was Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye!
Thank you.